live.
So namaste, Mr. Shameel Sharma.
Namaste, Jerry. Good to see you.
Good evening and welcome to the ODHR Experience conversations that we have every Thursday with industry leaders like you. It's been a long time, Shamil, and I'm very happy to host you on this program today. A lot of our audience who has joined us, thank you for joining and would learn a lot from your insights because you're one of the few industry leaders who pays a lot of attention and focused attention to people development and investing in people. So we're very glad to have you on the ODHR Experience conversation, and we look forward to learning from you.
Oh, thank you, Jerry. It's always a learning experience for me myself when I have these amazing conversations with industry experts. So I'm really looking forward to this entire discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Shamil. So Shamil, to start with, like I do with all our guests, walk us through your life story. I mean, I think the audience and I would love to know more about your life story because you worked in several sectors, but I don't know the journey, just your working experience journey. I want to know the journey from childhood to now.
Well, I come from a defense background. My father was in the Air Force. So, it was a very, very different upbringing. Um, my father from day one has been somebody who's very independent with me and allowed us to do what we really wanted to do. Whether it was me or my sister, we actually got a lot of independence to do stuff the way we wanted to.
Right.
I'm actually very, very fortunate that my career has actually, progressed through diverse industries. And
Right.
sometimes, when you're actually going through the career, you kind of question yourself to say, hey, why am I, doing this? Or why am I going through this? But, I would say there is somebody eternally out there who's actually kind of guiding you and taking you through all these experiences. Because now, 25 years later, when I look back, I think each and every of those experiences was worthwhile to build me as the person that I am today. Like when I started working in the hotels, I worked in hotels for 4 years, but hotels teaches you about customer service. Hotel teaches you about situation handling. Hotel teaches you about perseverance and working long shifts and really struggling it out there and being tough.
Right.
Move to the airlines, a different industry again, when again there was a lot of relearning, unlearning, and a whole lot of stuff happened. And airlines was again very, very different. But both these industries kind of set the foundation for the IT and the ITS business that I got into later, which was the BPO side of the business in 2002. But one good thing that's happened with me is I've never stuck with doing that one thing all the time. For example, when somebody goes to operations, they're stuck with operations for the remainder of your life.
Right.
But I was in operations, transitions, quality. I then moved into vendor management with Microsoft. Went and had done a lot of stuff around business transformation. Started running my own large verticals. When I was with Styria, moved on to other places where I was running the entire business, which included HR, finance, and a whole lot of other facets. So I think having that blended experience really helped me a lot because for me, as an HR leader or as an operation leader today, I don't really put myself into one particular bucket. But the point really is, I understand operations. I understand all the pressures that people in ops go through. I also understand all the pressures that HR goes through, finance goes through, facilities goes through, client goes through. Because I worked on the client side too, as when I was working with Microsoft. So this has really helped to really develop my entire profile, and I'm really thankful for the background that I've had, the mentors that I've had, people that I've learned from. And I think the biggest of all is the internet and YouTube. The number of videos out there where you can read stuff and learn from others is just simply amazing.
Right. So all that experience in different sectors has kind of been a learning journey on its own.
It definitely has. I think, I still say that although I worked in hotels from 95 to 99 as a lobby manager, if you put me behind the reception or you put me in the lobby still of a five-star hotel,
Right.
500, 600, 700 rooms, I'll be able to run it. Because, whatever that we learned then is so much ingrained inside me, inside my DNA, that I just know that I can do it again. I mean, you put me in front of a 747, Boeing aircraft and say, okay, fine, offload this aircraft and monitor everything. I can do it still. All
Right.
this been ages, and years that have gone by. But
Right.
these are all fond memories. If I ever asked a question, do you want to rewrite anything? No, I don't. I think I just had the perfect career, great bosses, great mentors, and great people. The people that I've
Right.
worked with, amazing bunch of people.
Right. And I also noticed in my journey of learning with you that you like to invest in people, like to mentor people yourself. And that's the virtuous cycle that you try to create in some organizations where I've worked with you. Do you want to share some of those insights with us?
Jerry, through my career, you always go through these situations when you wish that the organization focused a lot more on you. The organization focused a lot on transparency, fairness, and open communication, and really creating a great workplace. And many places that I've worked in, people's focus was only on revenue, the money, the client, and never really on the employees.
Right.
And every experience that I went through, I kind of always promised myself that when I will be in a situation, I'm going to be different. So
Right.
even though I was an operations manager at one time managing 250 people, I ensured that my business ran well and business ran differently from the remainder of the organization because I feel that I owe it to my teams there. I owe it that when they come into work, they come in happy. When they're
Right.
leaving back home, they don't carry any of their worries back home.
Right.
It's a strong statement to make, not always possible to be done because at the end of it, when you're trying to deliver to a large team, you alone can't do it. It's your entire team which comes together to deliver to a laid down objective.
Right.
And that's where I kind of struggled all the time because while there was a certain direction, and maybe that certain direction is followed by a few of my team members, the others had different ideas. Unlike the forces or unlike an airline pilot, I mean, you are taught a particular skill and that skill stays with you. So when you hire an airline pilot, your X number of hours are done and he's going to fly the aircraft. But when you hire somebody in the IT and the IT industry and you bring somebody on board, you feel, oh, you should be easy to slip in and manage the culture, manage the people, manage training. But unfortunately, that doesn't happen. You
Right.
have to really invest a lot in training and building up that capability. And
Right.
that's the reason why I think, in a selfish way, I invest in people because I want to make my life easy.
Okay.
And to be very honest, if I don't make my life easy, I can't do anything else, and I'll be stuck doing the same thing day in and day out. So
Right.
it's a very, very difficult process, but every organization needs to do it. If you don't invest in your people, if you don't upgrade their skills, if you don't give them the opportunity to learn something different, and if you're, for example, a .NET programmer and your entire life you're doing .NET, I mean, tomorrow this person's going to leave and go somewhere else. So either you
Right.
give them an opportunity, the organization,
Right.
or then you get ready to say goodbye to them. But I think that the senior leadership is more of a concern for me because I feel that after all the studies, people leave managers, and they do. But people also leave company and cultures. And manager is a part of it. So if your company culture is anyways messed up, the manager is also going to be messed up. So I think there's a huge responsibility that all of us have. And that's the reason why I just try to invest whatever time that I can, build in policies, processes, procedures to really push training within an organization, both self as well as organization led. Successful in many places. Many places it still takes a little bit of effort to get people to be truly invested in themselves. But the fact of the matter does remain that if you don't invest in yourself, very soon you'll be an outdated, stale commodity. Nobody would want to be working with you.
Right. And I like what you're saying because, I mean, I always say leaders create more leaders and leaders make themselves redundant, which means you're not required in every situation. Because if you're looking into every situation and micromanaging, that not only kind of creates distrust and a culture of, disempowerment, but it also kind of burns the manager out, right? And most people don't realize that because they like to look into everything because of their own insecurities. Do you have any thoughts to share on this?
I think there are people who just want everything to be perfect. And
Right.
sometimes, what? A little bit imperfection is okay. Everything
Right.
doesn't have to be amazing.
In
A
fact, I
temp-
always say, Shamil, I'm
yeah,
happy you brought this up because I always say perfection is the biggest lie of the world. There's no
right,
such thing as perfect. I mean,
right.
until and unless you're Amir Khan, of course, which he knows how imperfect he is. But and that's the Saki one. But what I'm trying to say is perfection is the biggest lie. And and yet I completely kind of echo your sentiment of how many people think they are perfect and want perfection and thus burn out the team. So please continue with your line of thought, please.
No, so I was just saying that it's never like you can't really push for perfection all the time. Okay,
True.
and
True.
managers and leaders need to let go. They need to trust people, and if they make a mistake at the end of it, it's fine. I mean, there was a time when I was learning too. I've made mistakes. It's not as if that I've been perfect in my entire job. I mean, there have been times that a flight has got delayed because something of what's happened on the shift, or some other faux pas has happened, and things have. But if my managers did not give me an opportunity to learn from it, it wouldn't really make sense to me. So I truly, truly believe that as leaders, we need to not only nurture the next in line and the next in line, but create future leaders. And micromanagement doesn't help at any point of time. You have to have trust. So once you've briefed everybody, they know what. So firstly, I think I'll just step back a little. I think it's all about setting expectations, getting them to understand what the long term vision is or the short term vision is, what we're trying to do.
Right.
And when everybody understands what the vision really is, and when you give them a task to do, you don't really you don't need to go back again and again and check with them how it's happening, because they know for a fact and they feel empowered that if they have a problem or a situation where they need advice, they will come to you and they'll ask you. And again, many times I don't feel that, people need to come to you in the first place.
True.
Like, I believe very strongly in mentors or buddies.
Right.
And I do a lot where, senior leaders who are good at a certain thing, I encourage them to hold sessions within an organization where they're sharing their knowledge with the others.
Right.
Two reasons why. One, you have a skill set which is good that you're sharing and you're giving
Right.
back to the community and the organization.
Right.
And second, many a times people learn better from others who are your peers, and because rather than trainers coming in, because kind of they speak the same language, the same example, it just makes things easy.
Right.
But micromanagement definitely is a strict no-no. You have to be leaders for the future, because our businesses can't really be sustained on one or two people.
Right.
But at the end, I also say the same thing, that a business is not dependent on the leaders. A leader can come and go.
Right.
It's for the leader to really decide whether when he leaves, what is he leaving behind? Is he going to leave behind chaos?
Right.
Or whatever money that the leader is earning from a company, it is, my moral obligation to train the next line, so that when
True.
I go,
True.
things just continue the way that they are.
Right. And absolutely, I completely echo your sentiments, because leaders create more leaders, and leaders treat everybody as a leader, which means just the CEO or the so-called leadership team is not the leader. The intern who's joined you is a leader, because he's going to lead his own process. Even if a person is, what do you call it, an individual contributor, he's still leading her or his own process. So they're all leaders, and you got to treat them like leaders and help them to understand what a leadership mindset means. And I'm very happy that you spoke about the mentoring and the buddy program, because I teach mentoring in a lot of organizations. And this word is very loosely used by people who call themselves chief mentors. And almost every investor in every startup is a mentor.
Self-appointed title.
Yeah. And none of them know the art, the craft, and the science of mentoring. I have an entire book on this and a program. And this takes me back to our offsite at Lonavala, when you had invited me to do a small talk. And I remember at that offsite, you spoke to me about, you briefed me, in fact, how we need to kind of create a learning culture by sharing, where everybody shares knowledge. And I'm very happy that you said that, because in many organizations, many senior managers and so-called leadership teams, the CXO level as they are called, they don't like sharing knowledge, right? Because of their own security. So even if they share knowledge, they won't share it abundantly. They'll share it in bits and pieces. Do you know what the reason for that is?
I would like to put it in the bucket that they probably don't have time, or they don't really think that it is important to be really sharing knowledge, because they're fine with wherever that they are.
Right.
And to your point, in many organizations, yes, it is because of insecurities.
Right.
Because if I really train the next level to the level where he can tomorrow replace me, it's going to make me redundant. So why should I really go ahead and do that? But I think this is again the culture of an organization.
Absolutely.
A culture of an organization which is negative and toxic, you will have these kind of thoughts. But if a culture of an organization is one of openness, empowering people, growing together, one team, and all elements around it, the treatment would definitely be different. So I'll give you an example. I keep on pushing a lot of teams or organizations to really look at training really holistically. Training is not just about what organizations push down your throat and say, listen, you got to do ABC. It is not about those 16 hours that you have to clock in a year just because your performance review needs to be done as a tick in the box.
Right.
A training is only effective when the person who's getting that training or the coaching truly wants it. Otherwise, it's just a waste of time. You spend money, somebody sits in a classroom, nothing happens after that.
True.
And I have actually, in every place that I've been, I've tried to ensure that we build training plans individually for all employees in an organization, where the training plans have three distinct components. The first component is an employee's self needs. So for example, Jerry, what is it that you're interested in for the next 1 year? You say, you know what, I want to learn how balance sheets are read. You've got nothing to do with finance, but you want to learn what balance sheets are read.
Right.
You want to know about robotics and RPA. You want to know about project management. Sure, Jerry, mention what is that you want. Document all that. Say, okay, Jerry wants to learn these things in the next 1 year. And second thing is Jerry's manager. What do you think does Jerry need to learn? And Jerry's manager says, you know what, he's missing this, this, and this to help him better his career and do better. So, okay, thank you. Second point. Third point for Jerry is, Jerry, forget about work. What else do you like to do?
Right.
Do you like carpentry? Do you like photography? Do you like cooking? Do you like long distance running? What is it, your hobbies?
What are you impassioned about? Yes, very nice. Yeah.
Once you have those three elements, the next stage basically is you don't have to invest crazy amount of money. Some of the stuff that this guy wants to learn, for example, he wants to learn about balance sheets. Your finance head knows how to read balance sheets. If you have 40 people in the organization who want to know balance sheets, pick up that training, tell the training, the finance head, this is your responsibility. If you don't train these 40 people on balance sheets, I'm going to ding you on your review at the end of the year, because it is your both responsibilities to bridge that gap.
Very nice. And I'm
So
happy you're
as you
saying this.
yeah, and as you start
Absolutely.
doing that, you realize that, you know what, you're building a community of mentors within an organization. Everybody's taking true ownership of mentoring somebody else, not because there's threat or whatever, because they want to share knowledge, because they want to truly help an organization improve. Now imagine that third session that I told you. First and two is fine.
Yes.
My self training, my manager's training, great, I'm doing that. But the third one, I like, let's say hypothetically cooking. In today's world, with all these kind of technology that we have, what if I form communities within an organization? So there's a cooking community, there is a boxing community, there's a bicycling community, there's a cycling community. Now
True.
you're building communities, and they're sharing ideas, they're doing things together. That's how one team needs to be created. You empower them to take decisions, you give them trainings, not just like, put them into a classroom, but give them, whether it is, Udemy or Coursera or, Skillsoft, give them the access to these trainings and let them choose their own path at the end of it. Everything cannot be dictated, everything can't be, but that has to happen with everyone. Like you said, from the intern all the way to a CEO, everybody
True.
needs to sign off and everybody needs to take ownership of their development.
Very nice. It's something. If you recollect, I had shown the videos of the Ferrari pit crew and how
Yeah.
the Red Bull pit crew beat them at the Lonavala session, and I call this the pit crew mindset because
Right.
each member of the pit crew works on all the parts of the servicing the car, right? So they know exactly what the other guy is doing.
That's right.
Now, if finance does not know what marketing is doing, then finance thinks that what they're doing is more important and what is doing is not important. If marketing does not know what sales is doing, how do sales guys are poor guys working out there in the sun
Right.
while they sit in their plush offices and come up with these marketing plans? Then there's a disconnect over there because marketing is selling to an audience which is not the target audience for sales, right? And I think this is where you kind of engage at a peer level at all levels and you create a whole system alignment
Right.
and that's why in the pit crew Red Bull managed to beat Ferrari with by reducing it to 1.8 seconds because all the 18 members of the pit crew know exactly what the other guy is doing, and at 1.8 seconds there's that kick on the car and the car takes off. It's
That's right.
done. Failing
That's
which
right.
it's in a ball of fire. Now
That's
you
right.
need huge security and to kind of just articulate what you said earlier. It's not because people don't have time that they don't want to invest in helping people to learn. It's their insecurity. Because if Shamil knows as much as I do, then Shamil's dependency on me reduces. I
Right.
want Shamil to be dependent on me. That's the mindset of a very petty, toxic manager. A great leader, a real leader would say, Shamil should not need me
Right.
whether I'm on holiday or I'm on leave. So Shamil knows what to do because Shamil is completely empowered to take that decision and I stand by it. And that's what great leaders do. They empower people. And in case that decision goes awry, you take onus of the failure. While if everything goes fine, you say, hey, great job, Shamil. You did it,
Yeah.
you know?
No, truly. And Jerry, in one of my previous assignments, I had actually given a task to my senior leadership, and these all
Mhm.
VPs and senior VPs. And I said very clearly, I said, the day that you can build your next in line and your next in line, and you feel that a business can run without you for 3 months, that's the day you come to me and I'm going to give you 1 day extra month's leave. Just go on a holiday. Just go.
Right,
You'll be paid
right.
for, just go. But give me the confidence that your business will continue without you being there for 3 months. I mean, they took it as a task. It took them a year to do it, but they did
Right.
manage to do it where they build their succession. Sometimes I think you got to use different tactics to get work done.
Absolutely. And I think that all boils down to creating those mentoring cells. And I'm very happy that you use words. And I don't know whether you read my mentoring book, but
I
we
have
teach
not.
people mentoring. We teach
Right.
people mentoring, but in most organizations where I've launched this, so we have men mentors and women mentors, specifically because women there are issues around there, which if
Right.
we have time I'll discuss. But we call them the buddy programs, which means right from the time a person joins to the time a person leaves, in case she or he leaves, they are free to choose mentors from the panel. So it's not like a mentor is assigned to the mentee. That's
Mm,
not the right way to do it. The
right.
mentee chooses who they
Right.
want as a mentor. So as a mentor, you have to be very inspiring. You have to be a person who's doing things right. And that's why I always say all great leaders need to learn mentoring skills. All
Right.
parents, teachers need to learn mentoring skills, because mentoring is not about telling people what to do. Mentoring is about making people think about what more can they do, which I have not thought of.
That's right.
Right. And
Very well
that's what
put.
great leaders are, because you can't think of everything. You're just a mere mortal. You're a human being. So you're as fallible as the other guy. You're not infallible. You're not impeccable. And that's the perfection which is the biggest problem of the world, because people sitting in the chairs think they know it all. And I always use a simple analogy to describe this. I always said, with a fancy Harvard degree in the on the wall framed there for everyone to see. You're sitting down in Gurgaon or Hyderabad or a high-tech city and creating a farming strategy for farmers in Maharashtra. Will it work? Till you don't go and understand what the farmers are doing and what is
That's
the
right.
conditions of the soil, it won't work. So you have to learn from the farmers rather than kind of thinking that you know it all. So thank you for
Right.
sharing that. And I really like those thoughts that you shared, that as a leader, you want to identify what are the places where people want to improve, rather than treating training like a tick in the checkbox, which is what most HR leaders and most learning and development professionals do. And I don't blame them, because they are driven by their KRAs, which if they don't do, then the CEOs kind of reviewing them negatively. But the whole idea is that to understand what are those self needs. I like that thought. What are the management needs? And then finally, what would energize them? What would enthuse them? Because if people are coming to work without energy and enthusiasm, their productivity can't be high.
Right.
And that
Totally.
that and that's the problem with this term and nomenclature, which everybody loves, including you love, I think, because it's called great places to work. And I find not only the rating very flawed, I also find the nomenclature itself, because no place can be great to work, because most places have toxic managers, right? Even if you have a great organization culture, finally it's a manager who's managing that organization, called a team within the organization. So even if you have 100-member organization, it's impossible for the CEO or the MD or the CEO or the CHRO to look into what every manager is doing. And then if you take great places to work and you compare it with Glassdoor, the story is completely kind of going in different directions. One's going north, one's going south, right? And then you compare this with the Gallup study, which shows you that 85% of people who come to jobs worldwide hate their jobs. It's a very powerful emotion. Like I always joke that love dies out, but the hate people take to their graves, right? So therein lies the disconnect of great places to work. But before going there, let me ask you, what are some of the best practices that you observed in your entire journey, right? As an HR person, as an ops person, as an MD of an organization, and now back to doing what you love best, which is working with people to develop human potential. What are some of the best practices that you observed?
Jerry, going back to the great places to work, for me, great places to work is more of a benchmark. And the reason why I've always done great places to work for the last 8, 9 years is basically to understand where does the organization that I'm working in stand compared to competition.
Right.
And while I can totally understand there are toxic managers in every organization and there's a problem, I guess what the Great Places to Work survey for me is a much more bigger component, because it covers things like communication channels within an organization, the competence of the senior leadership, integrity, things to do with collaboration, caring, whole lot of attributes.
Sure.
And typically I believe that when you go into any organization, or when you're trying to improve an organization, if you don't know what the baseline is, what are you really going to do?
True.
Two ways to do it. One is you go and ask the employees, and you have all these meetings with 1,000, 2,000 people and say, guys, what's your problem? They will probably tell you, not tell you, depending upon how open they want to be. In a meeting, you can't do one-on-one, so you do group sessions.
True.
And again, they won't be that candid. You can do anonymous surveys. You will probably get a lot more insight. And then you do a survey, whether it's a Great Places, Aon Hewitt, or whatever kind of tool that we
Right.
use.
Right.
That is to get a baseline. Because once
Absolutely.
you start picking up each of these components and looking at it by department, and you start building in corrective actions,
Right.
you want to see how is the baseline changed in the last 1 year. And that's the
Surely.
only reason why, for me,
Yes,
great
yes.
places to
No, no,
work
no.
and stuff really
Absolutely.
works well.
I
Nothing is
joke about this in many of my talks in HR forums. I say it's a
right.
great place to work till you join them. And the
But
probation period is
yeah.
over.
but but to your point,
Pardon my sarcasm, but I mean,
no, it's
I
okay.
work with organizations day in, day out, so I know how it is.
No, I totally
Yeah.
understand. I know you've got some firm views about a few things, and I will leave you with them. Okay, but I think learnings have been really, really diverse again. But again, I think the learning only happens when we as individuals are willing to look out and figure out ways of making things better.
Right,
For example, if the employees are complaining and saying, I don't come to know what's happening in the organization,
right,
it's more about saying, listen, what's going wrong? You're expecting a manager to communicate, but if the manager is not getting the communication, who's getting the communication? Where's the bottleneck? Do we really need to follow this route? Can we just
right,
do an open communication?
right,
Like for the longest time possible in one of my organizations earlier, I struggled to share my P&L with my team because the senior management didn't want that to happen. They didn't want to know the
right,
P&L of the organization. Why are you sharing with the team? I said, I want the team to know what
right,
revenue we're earning, what profit are we making, what are cost attributes.
right.
And finally, I did start sharing it, despite people's unhappiness about it.
Mm-hmm,
But there was one year when it was a situation when we could give them zero increases,
mm-hmm,
salary increases,
mm-hmm.
but people were fine with it because they knew exactly the state of affairs in the company. And that's what the difference is. But anyways, what I mean to say is once you look at various attributes of what you really want to truly want to improve, you start thinking, your team starts thinking, employees start thinking, everybody starts thinking, and they come up with amazing ideas.
Right.
And those ideas need to be harnessed. Those ideas need to be rewarded. Not rewarded in terms of money, but rewarded with a pat on the back saying, awesome idea,
Absolutely.
implemented.
Absolutely.
When you're having a town hall meeting, you are saying, you know what? Rahul came up with this idea and we've implemented it. Brilliant, Rahul. Thank you so much. And claps. So stuff
Right.
like that. You have to do all these things because in the end, you as a leader can't hog away. The ideas are not yours. They belong to somebody
Absolutely.
else.
Absolutely.
So I would say there are lots and lots of practices across various attributes. I always tell teams and people that I work with, think of everybody as your customer.
Right.
Vineet Nair made this statement famous about employees first, customers second, and I followed him for a very long time, saying employees first, customers second. But at one time, I hit a roadblock saying, listen, but the customer brings in the money, and while the employee is important, I'm not saying not. If employee is happy, the customer is going to be happy, and employee definitely is important. But just saying employee first, customer second is a radical shift, and it was troubling me. I said, no, you
Absolutely.
can't do that. Customer is super important.
I completely
I said,
agree
you know
with you.
what? Forget it. Let's not say employee first, customer second. Let's say everybody's a customer.
Right. And I
So,
remember we discussed
yeah,
this in the
right.
leadership program that you had attended. Internal customers cannot be unhappy and make external customers happy. Right.
Exactly. So if
Yeah.
you start treating everybody as a customer, your vendors, suppliers, security guard,
True.
driver, transport
True.
guy,
True.
housekeeping staff, employees, if everybody is a customer and every interaction of yours is to make that experience wow,
Right.
there's a radical shift in the way that you work.
Right.
Because here now we're looking at creating that wow experience for everyone. And I think that really helps a lot. I mean, I can talk a lot about practices, Jerry. I mean, the lows and lows of them.
Mm-hmm.
I have been doing culture creation for a long time. I think I can go into any organization and turn it over. But I'll be happy to probably do a side note and share it with the group if you want that to happen. But any
Surely.
particular thing you want to ask me, please do. But
No, no, no.
yeah, it's
I just
difficult
want,
to.
and I like what you spoke about how you need to empower, how you need to fish for ideas, because all ideas should not come from you,
Right.
because you're not know it all, right? And yet many managers end up doing that, especially when they start getting into the CXO level roles. Then they think they need to control it all, and that's the mistake that they make, and that's where the derailment starts. Because if you're not fishing for ideas, you're not engaging people in their mind. They're not just coming physically to work because it pays the bills. And that's the
Right.
reality of the workplace today. 85% of people, like I said, that's the Gallup study, it's not gone down. It's gone down from 87% to 85% in 2017. So there is a reason people hate their jobs, and I've broken it down into two reasons. One is that they're being squeezed like lemons just to get a performance, productivity, profitability, etc. They are not really being looked at like human beings. And I've said this in many SHRM and NHRD forums where they keep discussing, should we call them human capital? Should we call them? I'm like, just call them human beings. They're simple human beings and treat them like that. Don't treat
Right.
them like resources. Don't treat
Right.
them like liabilities, right? Treat them like assets. Treat them like human beings who have huge potential that they can kind of go beyond. Now, the problem with us is, and that's why I always use this line, great parents make great leaders. As parents or as managers, we only focus on performance, not on potential, without realizing that if the potential, which is in the roots, is made stronger. If you unleash the potential, the performance is automatic, right? So that is one reason people are not feeling that their potential is being understood or unleashed. So they're coming to work, but it does pay the bills. They have to pay all those
Yeah.
kind of bills and the rent and everything, right? But there's another big reason for this, and this is the bigger reason, and that is a self reason. Many people give up their dreams, especially in our geography. By the time you're 21, 22, that question at home and in the community, in the family becomes very strong. What is your plan? कि नौकरी वोकरी बारे के बारे में सोचा है कि नहीं. तो पूरा जो मेरा ड्रीम था of being doing something on my own as a entrepreneur or adventurer goes on the back burner, and then life takes over. You get married, you get settled down, and then you have to
Right.
do a job because you have to pay the bills and you have to fend for your family,
Right.
right? So you don't end up doing truly what you wanted to do. Now what has
Right.
happened is neuroscience, the brain has registered that you're not doing what you love. So slowly the mind starts developing what is called in psychological studies as the victim mindset.
Right.
And that's why you see a lot of people, the apathy that you see in the workplace. Oh, what can I do? Shamil expects too much of me. There's no budget. I'm more qualified than this. Yeah, get out of it. It's actually the victim mindset. So transforming people from the victim mindset to the victim mindset is a big challenge. And the second thing which I think is missing is that most employees come to work with the employee mindset. And for the past many years, I've been doing a program called Entrepreneur Mindset. And it's not about calling them entrepreneurs. It's about understanding, does this person have an entrepreneur mindset? Which means it's not about the budget, because no entrepreneur has a budget or resources. You find ways of getting things done through your resourcefulness and initiative and proactive nature, right? So that's what we are teaching. And I think that's something which leaders again should focus on, because when you teach them entrepreneur mindset, then even if I'm not in finance, I want to learn more about finance, because that will help me somewhere in my journey. So you create that interest and you help people to understand how learning and even doing the job that you don't love right now is going to help you in your journey going forward. And that's exactly what mentoring is all about. So I'm happy that you're saying all this, because you truly been doing this. I mean, I know you now for the past 7-8 years, and I've seen you kind of design those programs in close consultation with me, in close consultation with your HR head, and then kind of saying that, no, I don't want this 3-hour talk to go wasted. I want everybody to go back with a wow factor where they feel that there's something for them to take away.
Right.
Right. And I'm happy that you shared that with us. So the biggest thing happening today around the world is everyone is talking about this animal, this beast called organization culture.
Right.
Right. And there is frankly no cookbook for it, nor can you cook the books for it, right? Because a culture is created not by the CEO or by the Prime Minister of India. A culture of an organization or a nation or a world is created by the people, right? What are the thoughts and insights that you have to share on how to create a great org culture for any person who's watching this?
I believe, like you said, each and every person in the organization is responsible for creating that culture. It's not a
Right.
one person's job. I mean, the CEO can have a vision of a great culture. He wants an open environment. He wants people to trust the management. He wants fairness, transparency, and the whole pieces around that.
Right.
But if his next layer doesn't really believe in it, then he can say whatever that he wants to, and he'll never, get what he wants.
Right.
And the point really is that if somebody like a CEO wants something to happen on this particular, behavior or attribute, what is he or she willing to do in terms of changing the mindset of all the employees in a business to be able to understand the expectations?
Right.
When it is a new company like a startup and you starting off afresh, probably it's easier that time because,
Mhm.
if the CEO has a certain vision, he can quickly working with the HR, the other leaders, ensure that each and every action kind of replicates the value system that they want to implement within an organization. But as an organization grows bigger, that's where the problem really comes in. Because if you start cutting corners, if you start ensuring that you're passing a certain message, but you're actually doing something else, because what you need to understand is the grapevine in an organization is the strongest, which ever can be there. I mean, you may think that you're doing something in secrecy in closed doors, but it doesn't happen. By tomorrow, everybody in the organization already knows about it. How it happens, I've never been able to figure that out. But the point is, you have to really have everybody committed to doing what is really required.
True.
So every journey about changing a culture really starts with where do you really want to be,
Right.
what do you really want to achieve, and why do you really want to change the culture in the first instance? Are you doing the culture changes because you want to be in the top 10, best places to work? Are you doing the culture changes because you want to ensure that employees are more engaged, are producing more and adding more value to the end customer? Are you doing a culture change because you want to control your attrition? I mean, there would be a reason. You're going to figure out why is it that you want to do the culture change. Somebody may say, no, I want to do a culture change because I want all my employees to just enjoy themselves when they come to work. I want them to feel really encouraged, passionate about what they do. I want to give them the foundation where every second and minute that they're in the organization or outside, they love the organization.
Right.
So it
Right.
all depends what you want to do. And the idea really is, how do you then translate that vision into a story that others understand?
Right.
So whether it's your mission or your, vision statement, how can you simplify that so that people understand
Right.
what it is?
Right.
What values and behaviors you want everybody in the organization to inculcate? How do you really describe that in a way that people understand? How do you reward behaviors which actually suit the need of meeting that wonderful culture? How do you ensure that you're taking those tough decisions without even, wincing even for a minute? So even if your topmost performer is messing up the culture, that person has to go. But if you say, no, this person gets me the maximum money, oh no, this guy's a sales guy, very important for me, I can't let that person go, and I'm okay to continue with him, it's a problem. It's a fundamental problem, because here you're going against the culture that you really want to set up, one of fairness and transparency and one team and everything else around it.
True.
So
One
I
team,
don't
one dream.
totally one team, one dream, together for one team. Lots of captions out there,
Right.
but I
Right.
feel it's all about the intentions at the end of it. I personally believe it's not difficult to build a great culture. It is easy to plan. The issue is in the implementation, and the issues only happen when the senior leadership, and I'm not here saying the CEO, when the senior leadership doesn't agree with it,
Right.
because they feel they got better things to do in terms of the revenue and the customer and the client and the sales, and all these things are fine. When you
Right.
start treating the human capital, as you said, as not really a human being, but just a capital who brings in some money. I think all
Right.
these are fundamentally wrong ways of thinking about the human resource, and that's what needs to change.
Right.
But it's not difficult, but the implementation is a problem, and the will to do it, because it is a painful process. There will be times when you hit your head against a wall saying, why? But there's always a reason why people are not listening. There's always a reason why something is not happening big. And the bottom line reason is you're not doing a good job in communicating that story to the people for them to understand, and the
Right.
benefits and the value that they get at the end of it once this entire journey is over. That entire journey has to be very, very clearly elucidated so that they understand what needs to be done.
Very nice. So, what I'm hearing you say is that a great culture can be created by all people involved in that organization when there is a very clear and compelling vision, mission, strategic goals, and value statement. Is that right?
And all the energies are totally focused on achieving those.
Yeah, because
And there is
that's
no
that.
ambiguity. Everybody understands this is what we have to do.
Right.
This
And
is
and,
what we are trying to
and
achieve.
very nice. And this is what I always explain to leadership teams when I'm engaging with them for visioning exercises. First, I insist that people from the grassroots also come into that glass house. I'm like, just the CXO team and the few hypers and hypots cannot create the vision. And vision is, where do you want to go, whether it's now to 2030 or now to 2022 or now to 2023. Vision is, where do you want to go? Mission is,
Right.
how do we get there?
Right.
And then that has to be broken down into strategic goals annually, so that,
Right.
and that has to be communicated to everybody, and that has to be
Exactly.
rooted in values, because values is where your culture holds, right? Because yes, we want to get here, but there are no shortcuts, there's no jugad, there is no get it done by hook or by crook. Some of this communication and this language becomes a problem in many organizations, and
And
many
I think
managers.
yeah, and I think, Jay, one more important element is, once you've communicated, it's about regular updates. It's
Right.
about celebrating the successes. It's
Absolutely.
about
Absolutely.
talking about the stories when things didn't go well and why they didn't go well, and being open to
Absolutely.
share with the entire
Absolutely.
workforce without thinking that, oh my God, they're going to think this about me. Oh my God,
Absolutely.
I failed. I mean, as a
Right.
leader, you should have the guts to really stand up on a stage and say, sorry, guys, I made a mistake.
And I'm happy you're saying this, because great
And yeah,
leaders create a culture of failure
that's
where
right.
people can make honest mistakes. But yet, in many organizations, what I see, Shamil, is that the manager will tell Shamil, innovate. You're a great guy. Do something different. Be maverick, but don't fail, huh? So it's kind of double speak. I mean, how can a guy innovate and be maverick without failing? Because to do anything innovative, to experiment, you will fail. right? So the double speak, this is the same thing that children face at home, right?
Right.
Beta aap kitna unique ho. So the same parents, like I say, come to work. That's why great parents make great leaders, right? And I'm very happy that you're clarifying this, because if those values are not clearly defined, and if this is not communicated regularly, and also celebrated regularly, when people kind of accomplish things, not just the profitability and the performance, but even accomplish how they have done it, with what. And the other thing is that you build in a people potential uh, index into your KRAs and KPIs, because in most organizations it's all focused on performance, it's not focused on people potential, it's not focused on investing in people. And I think those are
Yeah.
the insights for people watching to
Very,
kind
very
of
valid
implement in
point.
their organization. Yeah.
Yeah, valid point. I always keep on saying that if we as parents don't really ignore our child, and if a
Mm,
child has certain shortcomings, we work on the shortcomings, we help them
true.
to be better.
True.
Why do we have a different yardstick for our employees?
Very
And
true.
at the end of it, when you talk about a company being a family and the culture being a family, why aren't you able to stand up? So I actually question managers a lot, saying when they come up and say, I'm going to make a PEP plan, PIP plan, all this stuff, I'm going to fire this guy. My point really is, how much have you invested time in actually improving the abilities of this person? Let's say hypothetically the abilities can't be improved. Have you ever thought about transferring the person to some other part of the department, or
Right.
some other department where they probably have a much more better knack? Have you really done that level of assessment? I guess this is where the problem comes in. They expect HR to do all these things, but the point is the manager is the closest to an employee. They are there with them day in and day out, and they know the
Absolutely.
pulse of what their employee is. So it's always about investment. And like you said, how do you improve on that index? What
Right.
are you doing? How are you investing? How are you making them better? If at the end of the year everybody is where they were when they started off, you haven't done anything, and
Right.
you should actually be looking for a new job, and somebody else should be doing the role that you're doing.
Right. Recently on the learning and development group, a question was asked that, what do you think we should call the HR or the learning team? And
Okay.
many people wrote many things, and I said, just call it the human potential facilitators, right? Because you're not empowering them, you're not enabling them, you're helping them to find it within themselves, because they're
Right.
within themselves. You're helping them to, just by facilitating that process. That's what we do as trainers and coaches. We help people to see the potential within as a facilitator. I mean, it's not that they have to be told you have this potential, right? And I think that's exactly where the HR team comes in. And HR is not a department, like you rightly said. HR is the responsibility of every manager at every level. So if you're not developing that human potential, you actually fail the person who's
Right.
working with you. And more than that, you fail the organization, right? And I find this very funny that, whenever a senior management position has to be filled up, most organizations are looking outside. And I'm like, that tells me a story, that you're not building a leadership pipeline. Because if you have to look for this guy outside,
Right.
you're creating demoralization and disgruntlement inside. Right.
That's true.
And I think many people don't realize the small things that they should observe and fix. I'm going to show you a video now.
Okay.
I spoke to you about the fifth discipline. I shared
Hmm.
some reading material with you
Sure.
yesterday. It's a book by Peter Senge, who talks about how great organizations create a great learning culture, because leadership is learning, which means I may be the MD or the CEO, but if I think I'm beyond learning, I've lost the plot, right?
Right.
I see this in a lot of training programs. Yeah, the MD just comes and does the opening and then thinks that he knows it all, including in prevention of sexual harassment trainings. And I'm like, dude, you
You
can't
are the
just come
first.
and give me a talk and go and say I will sign later. You have to attend the training, because
Yeah,
others
you need
I'm
to know.
liable. You know, right? Because they think they're cat's whiskers, right? So let's watch what Peter Senge has
Sure.
to say about leadership, and then we'll discuss some more.
Sure.
What makes a great leader?
Well, first off, I always worry when we use the word leader that we have to define it. We tend to think of leader as boss. If you look at how the word's normally used, oh, the leaders around here, or the problem with that organization is its leaders. Those may be accurate statements, but what does it mean? Well, it means the people at the top. It actually isn't really what the word means. The verb To lead comes from an Indo-European root, Leith, Leith, and it literally means to step ahead, to step across the threshold. And if you think about it, the people in our lives who have really influenced us as leaders, they're in all kinds of different roles. It could be a teacher, right? It could be a relative. And so leadership is not about role. That's the most important thing to everybody to understand. Management is about role. If you're a manager, you're being paid to be accountable for results produced by others. So management is a perfectly legitimate profession. But leadership is different. Leadership is, you might say, more the spirit that animates good management. Good managers can be really good leaders if they have a sense of purpose and they really care about their people, like I was illustrating with Barbara a minute ago. I think leadership is always about how we create. How generative is an enterprise? That's a really good indicator of the quality of leadership. Are people really passionate about their work? As I said, it's much more about the spirit of things, as opposed, you might say, to the operations of things. They're both really important. If you want to have a really good organization, you want the operations to work. You want you might say, the machinery to work. You want the pay systems to be fair. You want the performance management review systems to be well thought out. You want to be using the right metrics, not the wrong metrics. All the nuts and bolts of good management. But you also want to be passionate. And you want to care about what you do, and you want to care about the people with whom you do it. So all of those are, you might say, the spirit of the enterprise. And leadership is probably the simplest way we have, that kind of we all recognize, of talking about, the human contributions to shaping the spirit of an enterprise. Our best definition, the one I've always liked the most of leadership, is it's kind of odd one, and there's a lot of definitions out there which are, I think, too individualistic, because I think leadership is both very individual and very collective. It's both. My favorite definition has always been the capacity of a human community to shape its future.
Oh, wow.
Because that expresses to me the spirit that really characterizes great leadership. People really believe they can shape their future, and they're passionately engaged in doing things that really matter to them.
So that was Peter Senge. Shamil, any insights and thoughts that you want to share from that small video clip that we saw?
No, I think this is pretty much self-explanatory. I think we really confuse the word leader, and many places just the top members of an organization, but that's totally wrong. I think we've
Absolutely
often spoken about this a number of times. Jerry, you also have spoken to the fact that everybody in an organization is a leader. The point is about taking the initiative and doing things differently, or just taking control of your life and just moving ahead. So totally in sync with that.
Right. And leadership, like I said, is not a position or a title. It's a choice, right? And it's not just a choice about leading others, because leadership actually starts by leading the self. That, do I really know what my vision for my life is? And a lot of people who don't have a vision for their life are then creating visions for organizations. It's a little strange and counterproductive. The other big struggle of most organizations today is another beast that people are trying to deal with, called employee engagement. Any thoughts that you want to share on this, and how is this related to org culture?
It all depends. What do we really define as employee engagement? If employee engagement is having fun and games and doing something online, playing tambola and stuff, that's probably a part of employee engagement. It's not really the entire employee engagement piece. I guess employee engagement for me is more about when you involve employees with the affairs of an organization.
Right.
Whether it is to redesign the new organization, or it is to be able to take on more complex tasks, guide them, mentor them, coach them, help them, support them while they go ahead and deliver to the expectations, or even short than the expectations. That's fine. When they really want to do something out of the box, when they want to be innovative, not just telling them that, yeah, you can take 1 hour off your timesheet and go and do it, but being willing to not just fund them, but also give them the right amount of resources who can help them innovate and really help build that particular idea.
Right.
But engagement is also a lot to do with your policies and processes and fairness around that entire element.
Right.
Training and development does play a huge role. I can tell you, out of all the things that an organization can do. When an employee comes into the organization, what does he look for? He looks for compensation. He
Right.
looks for fairness. He wants his performance review to be done properly. He wants a great environment to work. But at the end of all this, when all this stuff is done, he wants career development and he wants upskilling.
Right.
So training, capability development is a huge part of it. If you, like I said earlier, if you focus only on what the organization needs, that's like just focusing on 25%. You're letting the 75% go, because the remaining 75% is what's going to keep that employee with you.
True.
Build on a diverse set of skills, build on their own capability, and be able to support the organization as you expand within the next 15, 20, 30 years, because they are your true loyal employees who will stick with you because you have really nurtured their career and made them bulletproof.
Very
So
nice.
that's how it really goes. Yeah.
Excellent. I really love the way you articulated and explained that, because, going back to what you said earlier, everybody is a customer. And while many organizations focus on customer centricity, they fail to understand that the employee is also a customer. And that's why I say, when customer centricity is being learned, you have to put the employee right at the heart of it, because he's the singular customer who impacts everything else, right? Because you can't have great happy customers outside without having great relationships of trust inside. And that's why employee engagement also requires a culture of trust. And I remember when we were sharing messages yesterday, you said you'll speak about how a culture of trust is very essential. Do you want to share your thoughts on that?
I think trust is the foundation. Trust is the heart of the entire organization. You can put in the walls around the heart and they can kind of monitor what's really happening, but trust has to be without any walls.
Right.
Employees need to be able to trust each other, be able to trust subordinates, be able to trust people above. I mean, that's how the whole culture really works.
Right.
Customers need to be able to trust the organization because they know that the organization is ethical. The
Right.
organization does not lie. When they make mistakes, they come up and own up those mistakes. Even if there's a penalty of an XYZ percentage, it's fine. This organization stands for the truths. And those are all the things which really go into a foundation of building that trust. Trust also means being fair at the end of it. So you
Right.
cannot have one rule for somebody and a second rule for somebody, because that's where the entire trust element does get broken down. And the other element of that is sticking to your word. Commitments have to be adhered to, promises have to be adhered to. You cannot be giving a story or not being true when a question is asked. I've seen many leaders, when an employee asks a question, they will shield, they will give only part of the answer, even though they know that it is a difficult question which will have consequences, but they still hide behind a wall, which is the wrong thing to do.
Without realizing that the insincerity is completely and absolutely felt in that space itself.
It is, and your body language shows, everything shows, and that's where you are breaking your trust with the employee, and that's where the foundation really gets shattered. So I think trust is something which not just managers, leaders, CXOs, everybody needs to really build in an organization. And that's the core of the ethos of a particular organization. Very, very important.
Right. And I completely agree with you, because, trust is the biggest and the best tool that you have in your arsenal as a leader. Because if there's no trust, no other skill, no behavior will work. Because at the end of the day, a lot of people do this programs and talks on ethical leadership. I'm like, you don't need to use the word ethical or sincere or genuine before the word leadership, because leadership encompasses all of this, right? And I think one of the things which people in HR and senior teams need to do is ensure that every person at every level is skilled to engage people in mind, body, heart, spirit, and body. Sorry, mind, body, heart, spirit, and soul, right? Because most people are just coming to work with the body because they need to pay the bills. You need to survive. So it's survival, right? So they come to work.
Sorry, please go ahead.
They come to work, they do their job. I'm not saying they don't do, but it's not really the high energy productivity that they could have delivered. And they all have it within them, but they've not been engaged. Second is, they want to learn. They don't want to feel that, Shameel or Jerry is only squeezing me as a lemon and not really kind of understanding my potential to learn and become more, grow more, do more, right? Because most people think growth is the next big promotion in the race without realizing that growth is directly related to learning. The third is they want to feel loved. They're not just a piece of the furniture. They're not just a human resource. They're not just a P&L account, right? I mean, I'm given an employee number. What? Right? No, I'm a human being. Treat me
Right.
with love. Treat me with respect, right? And I'm earning my respect. So why am I not being treated with love and respect? So they need to be loved and respect. They need to get the heart. Then then the spirit, where they want to say that, I've created something, I've contributed something over here. Not that all the time I'm being told what to do. Just follow the process, man. Don't use your brain. You're not being paid to use your mind. This is the kind of language people use. Follow the process. Yes, the process is important, but the process is not perfect. So have you empowered them to improve the process, right? And are you listening to them? And finally, the moral health, right? The soul. I don't want to end up doing things which are wrong. And in a lot of organizations, managers are asking their direct reports to do the jiggery pogery to get the results met.
Right.
Now that then my moral health is down. I'm not feeling good about this place.
Yeah.
And people don't realize this has a huge impact on your overall emotional and mental health, right? And that's another reason people's energy is down. You were saying something.
No, I was just saying that, I think organizations really put HR at the center of a lot of things, but I'll be very honest, HR alone can't do anything. And many times they say HR is responsible for culture, HR is responsible for trust, HR is responsible for fairness. No, it's not. HR is only an organization which is there to support.
Absolutely.
In the end, it's
Absolutely.
the entire business together which needs to create the trust and the camaraderie and the friendship and the
Absolutely.
fairness and the elements around it. And somewhere online, many times I've seen a lot of people saying, "Oh, HR isn't doing their job." No, HR can't do their job because it's not their job. They probably are the gatekeepers to tell you where things are going wrong. But if your entire business isn't united, if the delivery people, the operations, sales, and anybody elements, finance, everybody needs to be together on a
Absolutely.
common vision, understanding what needs to be done,
I
a
completely
firm
agree with you.
handshake and say, let's work together towards it. That's the
Very
only
true.
time when a culture will change. Otherwise, HR can keep on doing what they want to do. Nothing's going to ever happen in an
Very
organization.
true. Very true. And I'm very happy because Shamil, I mean, our thoughts and minds are meeting in so many places because, like you said, HR is a support system, and HR can do things only if they're given that they have the willpower to do it, but they don't have the mandate to do it because the owner or the founder is wanting HR to do all those other things that they do, the transactional stuff, so that they can get the more juice out of the lemons, like I say, right? And then unfortunately, many founders, many owners believe that employee engagement is like you said, those games that you play or go whitewater rafting. And I actually use a metaphor now just to get the edge out of it. I said that's like taking a monkey to a L'Oreal salon, right? If you remember, I've been using this forever, right? Because you'll make the monkey look good for some time. It's cosmetic makeover. But when they come back to the workplace, the other games begin. The whitewater rafting simulated atmosphere is forgotten. Then the Eric Byrne games begin, right? Games people play, right?
Right.
So I think that's where HR, and I'm going to show you a very powerful video by Jack Welch, where he talks about how HR is not just a support function, it's the soul, right?
Right.
Let's watch this.
Yeah,
And
Jerry,
then,
just one disclaimer.
yeah,
Where I work right now is very different.
right,
Okay.
right.
So, if family owned, owner driven,
No. I'm not
just
talking
just
about it.
as the disclaimer. Okay.
No.
This is more
So,
of an independent thought process. Yeah.
yes,
Thanks.
surely. So I'm saying that, no, I'm just talking about
Okay.
uh, industry at large here. I'm not
Right.
talking
Sure.
about your organization. It's the general
Perfect. Thank
industry
you.
I'm talking about.
HR is, without question, one of the number one or number two most important functions in a company. I happen to believe it's number one. Many others think finance is the key to success in a company. HR is the driving force behind what makes a winning team. We make the argument that the team that fields the best players wins. HR is involved in making sure we field the best players. That's their job. And their job is to sit in every meeting, be involved in every part of the business equation. They're not the health and happiness, picnics, benefits team. They're the development team, developing today's and tomorrow's leaders. And if you have an organization where HR is relegated to forms and benefits, you got the wrong game going. I like to use one analogy. If you were running a sports team, whether it be the New York Yankees, the Boston Red Sox, would you like to hang out with the head of player personnel or the team accountant? Who would help you build the best team to field? Not the team accountant. Same thing's true in business. You get yourself a great HR person, preferably one with multi-skills in manufacturing perhaps before, or in sales, who happens to be a people person, who understands that the role of the HR leader is to be both pastor and parent. Pastor in keeping secrets, and parent in telling it straight. You get that person who loves to see people grow, and you've got yourself a winner.
Very powerful video, and I like that concluding thought that every person has to be a pastor and a parent. So you absorb whatever wrongs are being done to create a culture of trust, because every manager is the parent of a team, is the CEO of the team, because that's an organization within the organization. And just to clarify earlier, when you were speaking, when I worked with like 90% of the Fortune 500 companies now. I worked with all the PSUs in India. I worked with many family businesses, not just in India, but also overseas. Because many, even startups are like family businesses, right? Because the seed funding has come in from the bootstrapping, which family and friends. But when I say family business, it's a mindset. There are many family businesses which are more professional than Fortune 500 companies. And then in many Fortune 500 companies, you have managers who behave like lalas, right? Yeah. Because it's a mindset. Right now, how do you get over that? Because, like he said, HR is like it's not about arranging picnics and arranging transactions. You actually look at what you spoke about earlier. Look at the person's self needs. Look at their professional needs, and then look at what really energizes them and enthuses them and makes them kind of thrive rather than feeling stifled. Any thoughts that you have on Jack Welch's video?
Well, I would definitely agree that HR needs to have a seat on the table. And successful organizations ensure that HR has a seat on the table. They are not a department just to manage the induction and to manage people coming in and exiting the organization.
True.
So they're aware of the strategy, they're working with the business, developing plans and helping and assisting the business. And, if you're able to do that, then obviously you have a great organization because they're all working towards the same, vision and the end goal. And you're also right that there are certain family run businesses which have a different kind of a way of managing things. It's all about the money. I mean, at ACS, with Raj leading the entire business, I mean, his vision is very clear. I want people to love working at ACS, and that's the way it is. And that's how the entire framework of people development, working with people, really kind of works, building the trust element. Excellent. And where it kind of comes from the CEO and the chairman, it kind of really easily cascades to the entire organization, which is very, really useful. Absolutely. But I would definitely say what Jack Welch is saying is true. A lot of organizations need to reach there. That is the ideal state. There's a lot to be done, but people need to realize that HR is important. In many organizations, HR isn't given the importance, and they keep on struggling the entire to say, oh, how do I control my attrition? How do I control my dissatisfaction? How do I make my people more, engaged and, make them more passionate? You're not speaking to the people who know it all. They have advice to give. Speak to them, involve them in whatever that's happening. It's not the head of delivery who runs the entire show. It's everyone together.
Absolutely. And that's why in my visioning, before I start the visioning exercise, in the talk, I always tell people, leaders don't create vision. Leaders co-create vision, which basically means if you've not taken those insights and thoughts from all your team members before creating this vision, your vision is all right. And more than that, then there's no ownership of the vision. And I think that's what leaders need to learn. JC Desai was to join us, but she's unwell. JC is from Tangram Consulting. And, what we are creating is something called Great Organizations Affirm Learning, and that's a rating that we are creating, like Great Places to Work. But our focus is purely on creating a learning culture, because what research shows you is that when you create a learning culture, it creates trust. It creates a culture of failure also, because in your learning to learn journey is the opportunity to fail, learn, and then do it better, right?
Right.
Any thoughts that you have to share with us about what are the parameters that we should look for in a great organization's affirm learning goal rating, as we are calling it? Because the goal is that you empower every member of the team to invest in people, to bring out the best in people, and make people development and creating leaders within the organization an important part of the KRA. But any thoughts and parameters that you would like us to include in this particular rating? I'd shared the parameters with you yesterday.
Yeah, I think what you have covered is pretty elaborate and it's quite detailed. I'm sure that at the end of it, if organization take that survey, they'll actually get to know as to where they are as far as the improving the learning capability matrix is really concerned. Where do they
Right,
really sit as far as employees are concerned?
right,
Like I mentioned earlier, I would say 40% of the battle is still building a culture of learning and development. I mean, you
true,
can do all the other stuff, which is even actually more than 40%. I would say
very true,
50%.
very
You know,
true.
there was a time in one of my previous organizations where we had already hit a certain ranking on the trust index, very, very high. You couldn't do anything more.
Right,
And then the
right,
question still was, you still want to do more. What do you do? It was training and development. It was learning and development, because once you
right.
reach a saturation point, that's the only place where you can still continue to make the difference
Yes,
in the
absolutely,
lives of the team and the employee. And like I
absolutely.
said, I firmly believe in my 3-point plan. I try and implement that wherever I go. It takes time to
No,
do that
I'm
three way
surely going to
focused.
pass on those insights to JC. Yes, the
Okay.
self needs, managers needs, and the passion and interest needs.
Right.
Yes, great. Any other thoughts?
No, I think you've gone the right track. I mean, it is important to really understand from employees as to what kind of training platforms or training opportunities do they have available. And if the training is totally linked to the core job, because, I mean, things to do with initial training to make them better at what they're doing, I would kind of keep that aside. I would really look at other factors of capability development, which builds the overall capability of an employee, building future leaders,
Very
building
nice.
building people who can actually move into stronger positions tomorrow, as time goes by.
Yes, leaders create more leaders. Very true, and that's exactly what we are focusing on. And the reason that we thought about great organizations at the rate of learning, or goal rating, as we are calling it, is because while you cannot control the way managers behave with their team members as a CEO or as a CHRO, what you can influence is to percolate a culture of learning at every level, right? And that's where we are. So thank you, Shamil. Brilliant pleasure having you with us. A lot of insights that you shared with us. Thank you for all those insights. And I'm going to share the thoughts that you shared about what we can include in the great organizations affirm learning rating process with JC. Sorry that you couldn't join us today. And thank you to everybody in the audience who's been watching us on Facebook Live. And thank you so much, Shamil. Any closing insights that you want to share before
No,
you go?
that's it. Thank you so much, Jerry. I think you're on the right path. You work with organizations. You and I worked a number of times, especially when we had to push the right messaging with the wider workforce. So thank you for this opportunity. Let's create more leaders.
Pleasure
That's
having
what
you with
the end
us.
message is.
Yes. Keep
Thank you.
creating
Namaste.
more leaders. Thank you.
Thank you.
Namaste and have a
Bye.
great evening. Bye bye.